Hey, what's up, everybody? Marcos Villegas for Fight Up TV, powered by Stagefront VIP, being joined with Abel Sanchez in the house with us. Abel, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on. And I want to get right to it, man. A few months ago, I think when I interviewed you, I asked you about your Spence and Crawford prediction. I believe you had picked Spence based on his amateur experience and just overall what he brought as a fighter. Seeing the fight, Abel, what'd you make of the fight overall from your trainer perspective?
Terence looked like $1,000,000. He looked so good. He just did everything right, positioned right, was reading right. And for some reason, to me, Spence just didn't look like he was all there. I know that there's a better Spence in there. I don't know what the circumstances were leading up to the fight. So I don't know if he's had problem making weight. He looked drained. He walked into the ring. His eyes didn't look good, but you can't take nothing away from Terence. Terence did a heck of a job.
Yeah, I've heard that from a few trainers saying like, hey, that doesn't settle well with me. He looked off. Um, it's an interesting thing. Like, you as a trainer, you notice, like, you saw his eyes weren't right. What other things like are a big tip off that someone could not be right if that was the case? Because as we've seen and we've always known, like, Terence is a special talent.
He is a very special talent, but you don't knock somebody down at that level with a jab that really didn't hit him in the chin, hit him like behind the ear, kind of. And it didn't just knock him off balance, it knocked him down. So that just tells me that maybe legs weren't underneath him. He was a little weak. But all that being said, you can't take nothing away from Terence. Terence fought a heck of a fight.
Looking at the fight and seeing how dominant Terence was from like round two all the way up into the stoppage, what was some of the takeaways you feel you had in the fight? What were some of the things that you felt that were going well and were going wrong?
Well, for Terence, I've always been, I don't want to say a fan, but I've always been an admirer of the young man that works the mitts with him. I don't know his name. I'm
Is
sorry to say that.
Saul guy
Oh, Saul. Okay.
Gallegos?
I've always been impressed by the way he works the mitts with him. He's not working the mitts for Saul. He's working the mitts for Terence. He's Terence is throwing the punches correctly. Terence is positioning correctly. He's having them do things that you're supposed to do and not just make it a show. So as far as Terence is concerned in the fight, he was positioning right. He was adjusting his distance with his feet and not his body. His punches were all from very good foundation. He was positioning well. He was reading well. He just couldn't do nothing wrong. Of course, on the other side, Spence just didn't look right to me, and he just couldn't catch up with the timing that Terence had at the beginning of the fight. And then as the fight went on, it was just too easy for Terence. I believe that somewhere around the sixth, I think Terence backed off a little bit, wanting to not so much punish him anymore, but to land a couple punches where the referee could step in and stop it.
Yeah, I spoke to Kenny Porter a few days ago, and he had told me, like, yeah, the fight should have been stopped sooner.
Yeah, and I think I feel that Terence may have known that or may have felt that, but so he wasn't going to really press the issue. He was going to maybe land a couple shots, get an opportunity to land a couple shots where the referee steps in, and sure enough, he did. A little too late, but he did.
With this fight, like, what do you feel like should happen next, in your opinion? I know there's a signed rematch for them, though the weight I believe is going to be at 154, but just overall, like, the aftermath of all this, like, where do you think both Crawford and Spence should go after this?
Well, I think they should do the rematch. I think that since they signed it, they should abide by it, one. And two, if Spence had gotten beat and he was 100% to a lot of us that watch him fight, then okay, maybe then I would say, no, let's go on to something else. But I don't think Spence was all there. So I think a rematch should be done. And if he beats him at 154, then really there's no excuse unless he killed himself to make a weight again, which he shouldn't do. But then these guys sometimes are a little crazy how they lose their weight. But I do think a rematch is in order.
How different does a rematch look then with him at 154 and not having to cut that weight?
Well, he still hadn't cut weight because I'm sure he's not going to be 154 when he starts. But as a lot of us have mentioned, and as you mentioned, other coaches have said he wasn't right. Um, if Spence and Derek don't learn from this lesson, then there's nothing you can say. If he gets beat again the same way, then Terence is a real special talent.
Yeah, no, well, a lot of people have said, "Hey, look, same thing happens. Like Terence is just that good, regardless of what you think of the weight. Spence was in the fight, and it just was a different level that Crawford showed up with."
Well, I hope that's not coaches saying that, because if it's a coach, he doesn't know nothing about the game. It may be fans that are saying that, but coaches know. I mean, coaches know the troubles and the issues that we go through trying to get a fighter down to a particular weight. Maybe he started out too high and it took him too long or he didn't do it quick enough to get down to a respectable level so that he wouldn't have a difficult time the last couple of weeks. So there's a lot of issues that a lot of people don't know that happen in camp. And like I said, if Derek and Errol don't learn from this valuable lesson, then they deserve whatever they get.
Dang, so you're convinced that he wasn't right for the fight?
Oh, he definitely wasn't right. You just look at him. Look at his eyes going into the fight, man. He looked like he was loaded. That just fatigue. That just the body just don't want to be there. I mean, there's no way you can recuperate in those from the time they weighed in to now to the fight night. He's going to get a lot of food in him. He's going to get a lot of liquids in him, but he's still drained. He still killed himself to make weight. And to me, it was obvious. I didn't see the press conference, but somebody told me that at the press conference, he looked like a skeleton. I don't know if that's true, but is that true? Did you see the press conference?
Well, I was there at the post-fight press conference.
No, the prior press conference.
Oh, no, I was there too. I talked to him at the final press conference, and yeah, he looked like he was cutting. To be honest, he looked like a cut. Like I don't know if it was close to like when Devin Haney cut for his second Kambosos fight. He looked really sunken in, but he looked like he was going through a weight cut, a rough one.
And you see a different guy fight night. I mean, that's not the same guy you were talking to before on Wednesday or Tuesday, whenever that press conference was. So to me, that could have been one of the issues. The other issue is that he had a great fighter in front of him.
Yeah. And I don't like. I've been going with everybody that I talk to, and they either bring that up or Crawford, but I think also too, like, what I don't want to get lost in all this is how great of a fighter Crawford is, or like kind of like dismiss like his abilities and how good he is with that, even though it's up to whoever's watching this to kind of make their conclusion as to what they feel about what happened. But given that, how long should he wait? Like, you're a coach, you've been with fighters that have cut a lot of weight, and should he go into an immediate rematch? Should he wait a long time and then go into like a feel out fight at 54 and then go into the rematch? Like, what do you think, Abel?
From what I've heard, I guess the rematch is supposed to happen in December. If it was me, I wait until maybe March or April. Let him put this behind him and let him start from scratch, maybe 3 or 4 months before the date. But I spoke with Derek, not in words, but in text, and he did tell me that they're talking about December. So I hope they wait a little bit. Like I said, March, April would be best for me, as far as I'm concerned. Just give them a little more time.
What'd you guys talk about?
I would just tell them to we all have those days, man. We all have, everybody that's in this business as a coach and as a manager and as a fighter has gone through those days where nothing was right. Nothing was right. There's nothing that Derek could have said in a corner. There's nothing that Derek could have done. It was all, to me, it was lost prior to the fight. So just to keep his chin up, and he's got some great fighters under him. He's a good coach. He's going to be a great coach eventually when the time comes. But for right now, just keep your chin up and let's go get some, because there's great ones out there coming.
Was he? I would imagine he's pretty down, but did he express that to you, that he was pretty down about what happened?
No, we really didn't get that deep into it, but I imagine he is. We're never going to admit it that we are. We always try to say that it's just another fight, but it's not really. It's a very important fight that sometimes defines us in the wrong way. He's a very good coach. He's going to have some great fighters in the future, or even more great fighters in the future, and he's going to have some great wins in the future.
Did he tell you that Errol wasn't right?
No, I
No.
didn't ask him. You know,
Okay.
it's none of my business, none of anybody's business. That's something between him and Errol.
Okay. Okay. December. Wow. Yeah, a lot of people have been like shared the same sentiment as you, Abel. Like, hey, take your time. Errol should do like a battery of tests. A lot of coaches said to just check that he's okay neurologically as well.
They do a lot of tests before the fight. It's not. He hasn't had the kind of fights that are gonna require that. Let me just say that fight was tough, but it wasn't the kind of fights that, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 fights that have been the same way. He hasn't had those kind of battles in the past. So, yeah, they can do tests, but I don't think the neurological part of it was the issue and is going to be the issue. He just was not there. He was just not there mentally or physically.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, a lot of people mentioned because of the car accident and the accumulation of things from that up to this point to maybe do a battery of tests.
Yeah, well, they can. I mean, they should. He should check himself completely out. If not for this game, it's not for the next fight, but for himself and for his family. But really, a lot of people don't understand that the damage that is caused when there's damages in a fight is not necessarily from the fight. It's from the training camps. From the training camps. Imagine, I imagine that he sparred. What would you say he sparred? 120 rounds for this fight?
You would know more than me.
Yeah.
You're the expert.
Okay.
But
So maybe he sparred 100. Maybe he sparred 120 rounds. Maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks of 3 days a week. Maybe 8 to 10 rounds a week. So you got say 25 rounds per week. 5 weeks, 120, 125 rounds. He's a young guy, so he can handle that. Some of the older guys we wouldn't do that with, but some of the younger guys, yeah, you do that. So if he sparred that many rounds, just think about this. If he's got what he's got 25, how many fights does he have now?
I believe this was the 29 or 30. I have to double check what he's up there.
Let's just say for the last 10 fights that have been 10 rounders or championship fights, he sparred 120 rounds. That means that he's fought 12 fights before his actual fight.
Yeah, this was his 29th fight.
Okay, so he's fought, let's just say 10 fights that he's fought in the 10-round range, okay? So if he sparred 120 rounds for every one of those fights, that means he sparred, before his fight, he sparred 120 rounds. That means he sparred 12 10-round fights or 10 12-round fights. So the accumulation of rounds in the gym, because you still get hit, you still spar with good guys to prepare. That's really where the damage comes. So if they're going to do neurological tests, yeah, they should do them, but they should also watch how you come into the fight as far as rounds are concerned. At 29 fights, what is he, 33, 34 years old now?
Somewhere around there, yeah, early 30s.
He's starting to get to the point where maybe we need to, Derek, I'm sure will figure that out, that he doesn't necessarily need that many rounds. I remember one time Canelo said that he sparred 170 rounds for a particular fight. I don't really remember which one, but that's a lot of rounds in the gym. And that's a lot of punishment in the gym. So with Gennady, for the last 3 or 4 fights, I was only sparring him like 70, 75 rounds. Why? Because again, as you get older, you need to preserve some of that. And mind you, there were good rounds with good guys, but they weren't that many rounds. And they were against guys that were going to make him think and make him do the things instead of just sparring just for sparring with somebody and getting hit because you don't want to hit them. That all takes its toll.
So if he's 100% at 154, given what happened in this fight, would you still favor Spence, or would you kind of slightly lean towards Crawford now?
I'd have to make a real a close fight or give the edge to Crawford. Crawford showed me a lot of things in this fight that were very nice. Like I said, he did so many things so well that I had never really noticed that before in him. I was never really I'm not really a guy that watches a lot of fights. I like Spence because I like him coming out of the Olympics, him and Marcus Brown. But Terence did a lot of nice things in the ring that very few people do.
He wants to be undisputed at 154 pounds. Jermell Charlo is the champion over there. What do you make of a potential matchup with Jermell? And hypothetically speaking, because Jermell has a tough fight with Canelo, and we don't know what's going to happen if he's going to choose to stay at 54, if he ends up beating Canelo at 68. There's a lot of intangibles there. But if
he doesn't beat Canelo.
He doesn't beat Canelo.
He doesn't beat Canelo.
No, quicker guy coming up.
Doesn't beat Canelo. Coming up, the other guy was a 140-pounder to begin with. He was
Jermell?
a 47-pound champion. You know, people forget this guy was a 40. Was it Canelo for 147-pound champion?
No. His first title at 54.
Okay, but he fought at 47 at the beginning.
He did, yes.
Okay, so he's a guy that was going up 47. The same. No, it's a. He may have moved up in weight, but he still started his career. Most of his fights were at 47, 54.
But he was a kid though, Abel. He was like 16 years old.
He was still a fighter. He's still a fighter developing, and I think that Canelo's just. I think at that level, Canelo's a more rounded fighter at that level. I don't like what Charlo looked like against the Argentinian. What was his name? The first fight?
Castaño.
I didn't like what the pressure that Castaño put on him, and Castaño. It just Canelo's going to be a different fight, man. He's earned where he's at.
Yeah, I'm going to touch in further with this Canelo and Charlo fight. But if Charlo were to face Crawford today, right now, in 5 months, how would that go down?
I would like to see Spence and Crawford first at 154, so I can see how Terence does at 154, because he is moving up from 140. But listen, there's very few guys that are going to hang with him. Very few guys that are going to hang with Terence Crawford from the fight that we saw a couple Saturdays ago. Special talent.
You've been around a lot of special talented guys, and you've also seen a lot of the all-time greats fight. Bob Arum for years has said, like, hey, Crawford could have hung with anybody, any era. You know, in your opinion, given your perspective and a little bit of your insight, like how good is Crawford when compared to like the special fighters across the eras?
You know, I've never been one to compare him in the eras. Let's just celebrate Crawford for who he is today and what he is today. It's difficult to compare him because there's some great fighters back then. We don't know how they compare. That he's as good as those guys in their eras, absolutely. But to compare him like that is not fair to either guy. Let's just celebrate what Crawford did on Saturday for me, because I thought he looked like one of the all-time greats.
Good response, because there's so many factors, and I think the biggest is, you know, the athletes now are bigger, stronger, faster due to nutrition, better recovery methods, and all that. So that's what I always say. I always feel like, hey, if they're bigger, stronger, faster now, for the most part, many of those guys would do very well. But yeah, there are a special few that, regardless of like what era, they would have, you know, done very well.
The one thing that I will say is that Crawford is a throwback, and very few guys are that way. Canelo is two in a way. Who else can I? Inui. They're a throwback to the way fighters used to train and used to practice their craft. The craft is not practiced today like it was practiced back then. They were better fighters, technically more sound fighters then than they are today. There are exceptions. Of course, we have Lomachenko, who's tremendously talented, but you have a lot of guys in the top 10, a lot of guys in the top 5, a lot of guys that are champions that are not as good technically sound as the guys in the past were. Today, for some reason, it's let's see who gets there first instead of making sure that when we get there, we stay there. And that's why I think I'm a admirer or fan, I guess you want to say. I like watching him hit the mitts with Saul, because I think Saul does some of those things that not so much the mitts themselves, but just some of how he delivers his punch. I'll tell you another guy too that I saw doing it too is Devin Haney's dad. I saw a little clip of Devin Haney's dad doing some things with him that were not a show. They were not a show for the coach. They were actually practicing the craft the way it's supposed to be practiced.